My husband told me he married me because he didn't want to die alone, and worse, he thinks I'm ugly. I never thought I'd be saying those words out loud. The kind of words that make your stomach drop and your heart feel like it's been shattered into a million pieces. The kind of words that make you question everything you thought was real. But here I am. Before I tell you what happened, I should back up a bit. My name is Ellie, and I've been married to James for 8 years now. We met when I was 26, and he was 32. Nothing too special about how we met. Just two people who found each other at a friend's barbecue, started talking, and clicked. At least, that's what I thought had happened. James was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in me. He asked questions about my life, my dreams, my fears. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing. He brought me coffee exactly how I liked it without me having to remind him. He'd send sweet texts throughout the day just to check in. All signs pointed to a man who really cared. I wasn't the most confident person back then. I had my insecurities like anyone else, but I never thought they defined me. I knew I wasn't model thin or runway perfect, but I liked my smile, my eyes, the way my hair caught the light. I was comfortable in my own skin, most days anyway. When James proposed, after 2 years of dating, I was over the moon. Here was this man who seemed to adore me, who wanted to build a life with me. I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small but beautiful. We bought a house in the suburbs, settled into routines, built what I thought was a happy life. There were signs, looking back. Small comments about my weight when I'd reach for seconds at dinner. The way his eyes would linger on younger women when we went out. How he'd suggest I try a new workout program for my health. But I brushed him off. Marriage isn't perfect, right? Everyone has their moments of thoughtlessness. Until last month, when those moments of thoughtlessness turned into something I couldn't ignore anymore. It was our 8th anniversary. We'd gone out to dinner at a nice restaurant, had some wine, reminisced about our wedding day. The night had been good, really good. When we got home, we were sitting on the couch with the last of our wine, feeling warm and connected in a way we hadn't in a while. Do you remember when we first met? I asked, feeling nostalgic. James nodded, swirling his wine. Of course. Sarah's barbecue. What did you think of me when you first saw me? I asked, expecting something sweet, something romantic. The kind of anniversary moment you hold on to. He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his expression changed. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was something else, but his face took on this strange, almost pitying look. Do you really want to know? He asked. I should have said no. I should have changed the subject. But I didn't. Yeah, I said, I do. He took a long sip of wine, set the glass down, and looked me straight in the eyes. I thought you were nice, he said. Not really my type physically, but you had a good personality. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not his type. After 8 years of marriage? What do you mean, not your type? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. That's when the floodgates opened. James, my husband of 8 years, the man I thought loved me completely, told me he had always been attracted to petite, younger women. That when we met, he was honestly underwhelmed by my appearance. That he had been dating for years without finding the one and was tired of being alone. That he was getting older and realized he needed to settle down before it was too late. I learned to love you for who you are on the inside, he said, like this was supposed to be some kind of compliment. Your weight never bothered me that much because you have such a good heart. I sat there, frozen, as he continued, each word cutting deeper than the last. I don't want to die alone, Ellie. No one does. And you're a good wife, a good partner. Isn't that what matters in the end? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. 8 years of memories were rewinding and replaying in my head, all of them tainted now by this new knowledge. Every kiss, every I love you, every moment of intimacy. Had it all been a lie? Had he been settling this whole time? The worst part wasn't even that he didn't find me physically attractive. It was that he had made this enormous decision to marry me, to build a life with me, based on his fear of being alone and his assessment that I was good enough to settle for. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Lying next to someone who had just confessed he basically saw me as his backup plan. I stared at the ceiling until dawn broke, replaying his words over and over. The next morning was surreal. James acted like nothing had happened. He kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work, asked what I wanted for dinner later. like he hadn't just torn my world apart the night before. I went through the motions that day. Showered, got dressed, made coffee, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, really looking at myself, wondering what was so disappointing about the woman looking back at me. I didn't cry until later that afternoon, when I found myself looking through our wedding photos. There we were, smiling, looking so happy. Had he been faking it even then? Had he looked at me in my wedding dress and thought, well, she'll do? The tears wouldn't stop once they started. 8 years of feeling loved, of feeling chosen, erased in a single conversation. When James came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the wedding album still open in front of me. He took one look at my face and knew. You're still upset about last night, he said, setting down his briefcase. Upset. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. James, you told me you married me because you didn't want to die alone, that you've never really been attracted to me. How am I supposed to feel? He sighed, like I was being dramatic. I didn't mean it like that, he said. I just meant that marriage is about more than physical attraction. It's about companionship, partnership. And we have that, don't we? Do we? I asked, because I thought we had love. Real love. Not whatever this is. I do love you, he said, and he seemed sincere. That was the most confusing part. Maybe not in the way romance novels talk about, but in a real way. In a lasting way. I shook my head, fighting back fresh tears. How can you love someone you don't even find attractive? Attraction fades, he said, as if this was some profound wisdom. Look at couples who marry for passion. Half of them are divorced within years. We have something more sustainable. Sustainable. Like I was a resource to be managed, not a woman to be desired. Did you ever find me beautiful? I asked, hating how vulnerable the question made me feel. He hesitated just a second too long. You have beautiful qualities, he said finally. And that was answer enough. The days that followed were a fog of pain and confusion. I went through the motions of life, work, errands, cooking meals, but inside I was hollow. James tried to smooth things over, bringing home flowers, suggesting date nights, acting like if he just pretended hard enough, we could go back to before. But there was no going back. The truth was out there now, hanging between us like a dark cloud. I lost weight without trying, food turning to ash in my mouth. James noticed, of course. You look good, he said one morning as I got dressed, and I had never hated a compliment more in my life. I started avoiding mirrors, avoiding photographs. Every reflection seemed to taunt me now. This is the face he settled for. This is the body he doesn't want. This is what good enough looks like. Friends noticed something was off. Are you okay? They'd ask, and I'd nod and smile and change the subject. How could I explain this? How could I tell anyone that my husband of 8 years had just told me he basically married me out of convenience? The worst moments were at night, lying next to him in the dark, feeling the weight of his arm around me, wondering if he was thinking about someone else. Someone younger, prettier, someone who fit his actual type instead of being his consolation prize. 3 weeks passed like this. 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal while dying inside. 3 weeks of James acting like his confession was just a minor marital hiccup we'd get over. But something was shifting inside me. Slowly at first, then all at once. It started with small moments of clarity. Like when I caught myself apologizing for taking up space in our own bed. Or when I realized I'd been holding my breath every time he looked at me, waiting for his disappointment to show. Or when I found myself grateful, actually grateful, that he'd learned to love my personality as if that was some generous gift he'd bestowed upon me. That's when the anger started to creep in. Who was he to decide I wasn't good enough as I was? Who was he to marry me while secretly cataloging everything wrong with me? Who was he to act like his fear of loneliness was somehow my responsibility to fix? I started remembering things differently, not through the lens of gratitude that he'd chosen me, but through the lens of what I'd actually brought to this marriage. I remembered how I'd supported him through his career changes, his family drama, his periods of self-doubt. I remembered all the ways I'd made his life better, richer, more meaningful. I remembered the woman I was before I started shrinking myself to fit his idea of good enough. I began to see the patterns everywhere. How he'd trained me to be grateful for scraps of affection. How he'd made me feel like I should be thankful he'd settled for me instead of furious that he'd settled at all. How he convinced me that his lukewarm love was somehow more realistic than the passionate, all-consuming love I'd dreamed of. But the real turning point came when I overheard him on the phone with his brother. I was in the kitchen making dinner when his voice drifted in from the living room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then I heard my name. "Yeah, Ellie's been weird lately," he was saying. "Ever since our anniversary. I think I was a little too honest about, the physical stuff." My hand stilled on the cutting board. "I mean, she's a good wife," he continued, "but she's been all emotional about it. I don't know why women always want to make everything about romance and attraction. Marriage is about partnership, right? About finding someone who will stick around." There was a pause, then laughter. "No, I'm not going anywhere. Where would I go? She takes care of everything. She's stable. She's not going to leave me for someone younger like Jenny did to Mark. I've got a good thing here." I set down the knife very carefully, my hands shaking. "The thing is," James continued, "she was never going to be my dream girl, But dream girls don't stay. They got options. Ellie, she knows she got lucky with me." That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped. Like a rubber band that had been stretched too far and finally reached its breaking point. Lucky? I got lucky? I thought about all the years I'd cooked his meals, managed his schedule, listened to his problems, supported his dreams. I thought about how I'd made our house a home, how I'd been his cheerleader and his soft place to land. I thought about the life I'd poured into this marriage, the energy, the love, the devotion. And he thought I was lucky to have him? Standing there in our kitchen, surrounded by the dinner I was making for a man who saw me as his consolation prize, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. I felt powerful. That Saturday, James suggested we have dinner with his parents. His mother had been asking when we'd come over, and James thought it would be good to get back to normal. I agreed, but not for the reasons he thought. His parents, Robert and Margaret, had always been kind to me. They'd welcome me into the family without reservation, often commenting on how happy I made their son, how good we were together. Margaret would sometimes pull me aside to tell me how grateful she was that James had found someone who really saw him. Ironic, considering their son had never really seen me. We arrived at their house around 6. Margaret had made pot roast, James's favorite. We sat around their dining room table, the same table where we'd shared countless family dinners over the years. The conversation was light at first: work, weekend plans, the neighbor's new dog. Then Robert raised his wine glass. "To James and Ellie," he said, smiling at both of us. 8 years of marriage and still going strong. It's wonderful to see two people who clearly love each other so much. James smiled and raised his glass. "Thanks, Dad." But I didn't raise mine. Instead, I looked around the table at these 3 people who thought they knew the story of our marriage, and I realized this was my moment. Not to cause drama for drama's sake, but to stop pretending. To stop protecting a lie that was slowly killing me. "Actually," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I have something to say." James looked at me with curiosity, maybe even fondness. He probably thought I was going to give some sweet speech about our anniversary or a love story. "Robert, Margaret," I continued, setting down my wine glass, "I need you to know something about your son, about our marriage." Now James looked concerned. "Ellie, what are you?" "On our anniversary," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "James told me that he married me because he didn't want to die alone. He told me he was never physically attracted to me, that I wasn't his type, but that he learned to love my personality. He said he settled for me because he was getting older and needed someone stable." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face went pale. Robert set down his fork with a clatter. James looked like he'd been slapped. He also told his brother that I should be grateful I got lucky with him. I continued, standing up now, feeling 8 years of diminished self-worth transforming into something fierce and unbreakable. That women like me don't usually end up with men like him. "Ellie, stop," James said, his voice sharp with panic. "You're taking things out of context." "Am I?" I turned to face him fully, because I've spent 3 weeks thinking maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was being too sensitive. Maybe I should just be grateful for whatever scraps of affection you were willing to give me. I looked back at his parents, both of whom were staring at their son with expressions I'd never seen before. But then I realized something. I said, I wasn't lucky to get James. James was lucky to get me. I began counting on my fingers. I'm the one who supported him through 2 career changes. I'm the one who took care of his grandmother when she was sick. I'm the one who planned every birthday, every holiday, every celebration for the past 8 years. I'm the one who listened to his problems, celebrated his successes, and made our house a home he was proud to bring friends to. My voice was getting stronger, more confident. I'm also the one who's beautiful, inside and out. I'm kind, I'm intelligent, I'm funny, I'm loyal, and yes, I'm physically attractive. Not to everyone, maybe, but to the right person. To someone who deserves me. James was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. James married his best option, I said, turning back to his parents. But I married someone I thought was my soulmate. I married someone I thought saw me the way I saw him. As a miracle, as a gift, as someone worth loving completely. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. So thank you, Robert and Margaret, for 8 years of making me feel like part of your family. You raised a son who's capable of partnership and companionship. Unfortunately, you also raised a son who doesn't understand the difference between loving someone and settling for them. I headed toward the door, then turned back one last time. James, I'm not your consolation prize. And I'm not your insurance policy against loneliness. I'm someone who deserves to be chosen first, not as a last resort. The last thing I heard as I walked out was Margaret's voice, quiet but clear. James William, what have you done? I drove around for an hour after leaving his parents' house, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, adrenaline coursing through my body. I'd done it. I'd said all the things I'd been thinking, feeling, dying to say for weeks. I'd stopped pretending everything was okay. But now what? I ended up at my sister Kate's house. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without questions. Over tea and tissues, I told her everything. The anniversary confession, the phone call I'd overheard, the dinner at his parents' house. Good for you, she said when I finished. It's about time. What do you mean? Kate sighed. Ellie, I've been watching you shrink yourself for years to fit into James's idea of what you should be. You used to be so vibrant, so confident. You knew your worth. Somewhere along the way, you started acting like you should be grateful he was with you, instead of the other way around. Her words hit me like a revelation. She was right. I had been shrinking, making myself smaller, quieter, less demanding, accepting less love, less passion, less everything because I'd been convinced I didn't deserve more. What are you going to do now? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. I don't even know if I want to try to save the marriage or if I want to leave. What do you want, Ellie? Not what you think you should want, not what would be easiest or most practical. What do you actually want? I thought about it for a long time. What did I want? I want to be seen, really seen. I wanted to be desired, not tolerated. I wanted to be someone's first choice, not their backup plan. I wanted to wake up next to someone who looked at me like I was a miracle, not a convenience. I wanted to remember what it felt like to love myself completely. James called 17 times that night. I didn't answer. He left voicemails ranging from angry to apologetic to confused. The last one just said, Ellie, please come home. We need to talk. But I wasn't ready to talk. I was ready to think. I spent the next week at Kate's, taking time off work, trying to process 8 years of marriage in a new light. I called a therapist, someone who could help me untangle my feelings from my fears. I started journaling, trying to remember who I was before I became half of a couple that was never really whole. James showed up at Kate's house on day 5. He looked terrible, exhausted, desperate, confused. I don't understand, he said when Kate reluctantly let him in. I've been honest with you about everything. I do love you, Ellie. Maybe not in some fairy tale way, but in a real way. Isn't that enough? That's when I realized the fundamental difference between us. For James, settling was pragmatic, smart, realistic. For me, settling was a slow death. It might be enough for you, I told him, but it's not enough for me anymore. So what are you saying? You want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. The end of 8 years, the end of the life we built, the end of everything I thought I wanted. I'm saying I want to be happy, I said. Really, truly happy. Not just content, not just grateful. Happy. And you can't be happy with me. I looked at this man I'd shared my life with, this man who'd been my companion and my partner and my biggest disappointment all at once. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I know I can't be happy being someone's second choice. It's been 6 months since that dinner at James's parents' house. 6 months since I stopped pretending that settling was the same as being loved. James and I are separated now, working with counselors to figure out if there's anything left to save. Some days I think there might be. Some days I'm sure there isn't. But for the first time in years, I'm okay with the uncertainty. Because here's what I've learned. I'd rather be alone and hopeful than partnered and diminished. I'd rather wait for someone who chooses me enthusiastically than stay with someone who chose me reluctantly. I've started dating myself again, taking myself to movies I want to see, restaurants I want to try. I've started dressing for me, not for male approval. I've started saying no to things that don't serve me and yes to things that light me up inside. And you know what? I'm remembering who I am. I'm remembering that I'm not just good enough. I'm extraordinary. Not perfect, but worthy of extraordinary love. My name is Ellie, and I'm learning to choose myself first. It's the best decision I've ever made.